incredible thing. It's a Short Hops and Tall Tales podcast with Noah Scott and Brandon Riddle. How are you guys?
Doing just great.
yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Now look at, okay, if you don't know this, it's part of the Pitchless Podcast Network. Brandon and Noah will give you guys an introduction to it, but it's a phenomenal podcast. I remember talking to Trevor when we were creating these and we heard your demo essentially and just thought, oh my God, I'm just excited for this one because it's different than, it's not a fantasy baseball one. It's a celebration of the history of baseball and it's evergreen. It's something that you can always just turn on whenever.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. If PitchCon was a pitching arsenal in each segment, its own pitch, fastball, curveball, we'd be the spitball. We're a little bit wild. We shouldn't be allowed, and it's just a weird one.
That sounds great to me. I see you guys have shared something. Would you like me to push this forward?
Oh, sure.
That would be lovely.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to let you guys go after it. Thank you so much for being here. And remember, everybody, go to pitchless.com/PitchCon. Get those final contributions in. We can hit this $10,000 goal. I believe it. So go there right now and take it away, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Welcome to a very special. See, I was telling
so
Brandon
looking forward to this.
I can never get through an intro without fumbling it, and now I can't edit it because it's live. So
and that's why we call him One Take Noah.
Yep. Welcome to a very special episode of Short Hops and Tall Tales, a pictureless podcast highlighting the weird, funny, and bizarre elements of baseball that really make America's pastime special. I'm Noah Scott, and I'm thrilled to introduce my co-host, Brandon Riddle, live and in color here at PitchCon.
Man, live and in color. Welcome to the 20th century us.
Yeah, all right. Brandon, what do we got going on today?
So today, we got a lot of stuff going on. Like you said, we are live. So we actually have people watching us in real time, being able to comment, and which we do want to emphasize. Feel free to comment, join in. We got some trivia to go. So if you have any thoughts, let us know about it. And then in the show itself, we got a couple things. We have the great story, Jason Grimsley and the infamous bat heist of 1994. This is one of my favorite stories. Then we, of course, have a pickle jar when we talk about past baseball lexicon, fancy phrases that we use. And then we're going to talk about one of, again, my favorite World Series, the 1942 Negro League World Series. And if we're able to get through all of that in time, we have a little game called Keep, Cut, and Extend. So we'll see how much of this we get through.
Yeah, we'll see. I always really like your segments, Brandon, because once again, I don't really know a whole lot about what you're going to talk about, but I like to be pleasantly surprised. Okay. All right. But like you said, let's start things off with a little bit of trivia. Feel free in the comments to just throw up some guesses here. But who is the only player to hit a home run in the World Series for 3 different teams? Do you have any first initial ideas, Brandon?
I do. I think I know it.
Okay.
I'll give some folks a chance to maybe guess in the comments. I'm going to kind of talk about my thought process here. So, of course, it has to be somebody who's played in multiple World Series, not just for one team, but with multiple teams, which kind of narrows it down a little bit. And someone who has some pop in his bat that can hit home runs. So I think it's a former MVP from the 1980s who played in 3 straight World Series with 3 different teams each time. Don Baylor, former Diamondbacks hitting coach.
Wow, that was a very well thought out guess. You're wrong, unfortunately.
No! I thought I had that one.
You sounded really confident, and that's all that matters, right?
So not Don Baylor. Okay.
Not Don Baylor. Do you have any other guesses or anyone else?
So do we have a time frame here?
Yeah, I'll give you a time frame. You were right in the sense that it was 80s. So 1989 to 2001. You being a Diamondbacks fan, this is kind of lobbed up for you.
Well, you just said 2001. So now I'm going to have to figure out. So it's obviously not Greg Counsell. He had the home run in Game 1. And he played in the Marlins World Series in 97, but I don't think he hit a home run there. Gonzo, of course, went deep, but he was in other World Series. Jay Bell was a power guy, but he didn't play. Matt Williams? Because he played with the Giants. And I'm sure. Is it Matt?
It's Matt Williams. Nice
Hey!
job. That was a very well thought out. See, this is why I was asking the question, because I would have immediately blanked if it had been thrown to me. But yeah, Matt Williams with the Giants in 1989, with Cleveland in 1997, and of course with the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2001. Man, not exactly who you think of when you think Mr. October, but
Matt Williams is kind of a odd player, because in '94, before the lockout began, he was on pace to shatter the home run record.
Yeah,
he was a great power hitter for a while there, so it's not terribly surprising. But and he's part of the Cleveland team, which is one of the best teams out there because they had so many great players.
Oh yeah. And we are actually going to be talking all about those Cleveland teams. Now, for those of you who have been listeners since the start of the podcast, one of our, I guess, I don't know if I'd call it like a safe place for us, but we love talking about 90s Cleveland ball players and just 90s and 2000s ball players in general, because there's just something about that nostalgia that really sets in that era.
For us, at least.
For us, at least. We could be totally off base with anyone else. But anyway, so as you mentioned at the top of the episode, we're going to be talking all about this super wacky story about Jason Grimsley and the infamous bat heist of 1994. Now, at first glance, I think he looks fairly innocent in that photo. I don't know if that's the face of,
Grimsley has another story, but we'll get into that later. So yeah, maybe he looks pretty innocent there. Sure.
Yeah, sure. So it all started on July 15th, 1994, a day that will forever live in infamy. The top charting songs were I Swear by All For One and Regulate by Nate Dogg and Warren G.
I don't know those. I'm so sorry.
Really? Oh, you gotta know Regulate. That's so good.
Maybe.
For context, Cleveland was sitting atop of the AL Central standings, clinging on to a slim lead over the Twins and the White Sox in a tight 3-team race for the division. Now, this 94 Cleveland team had some really iconic names that you can see here, like Jim Thome, Kenny Lofton, Manny Ramirez, and and Carlos Baerga. Who combined for 13 and a half WAR over the course of the season. So they were really stacked. That lineup had some serious talent in it. And then as I was researching this, they actually had 2 starters in the rotation that were age 39 and up in Dennis Martinez and Jack Morris, which is something you don't really see anymore. But I don't know. I always think that stuff's pretty interesting.
I wonder why. Anyway, never mind.
Cleveland traveled out to Comiskey for the matchup. And at the time, like I said, the White Sox sat just 2 games back of first place. And they, in their own right, they were no slouches, and they had some big names of their own. Most notably, the Big Hurt, Frank Thomas, and Julio Franco, who was 35 at the
Julio
time.
Franco.
35 at the time, and he would go on to play another decade in MLB.
We need an entire episode dedicated to Franco, because I love that man.
Yeah. Did you have any of these cards in your collection growing up?
Back when I had the cards, those specific ones, I don't think so, but I do remember obviously Baerga, love Lofton, and I'm sure I had multiple Ramirez cards.
Yeah, that Kenny Lofton picture is iconic.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But among that stable of stars, the hottest player of the day was Cleveland's left fielder, Albert Bell. Now, for a little bit of context as to what he was doing in 1994, he comes into this into July 15th with a 1.139 on base plus slugging. He'd end up finishing the year with a 194 weighted OPS and a 186 WRC plus.
Those sound like really good numbers, I gotta say.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. If you're not super familiar with those terms, he was amazing. That's pretty much all you need to know there. He led the league with 294 total bases and ended up finishing 3rd in MVP voting. So he was in the middle of a tear. And when you have Manny Ramirez, Kenny Lofton in that lineup, and you're still the most feared hitter, you got to be
lineup,
right? You got to be eating your Wheaties, right? So anyway, leading up to the first pitch, the White Sox manager, Gene Lamont, was actually tipped off that Albert Bell might have been using a corked bat. Now, what is a corked bat, you might ask? So just a very quick primer. So that's essentially, you take a baseball bat, you drill a hole in the barrel, you fill it with cork, which makes the bat lighter and, in theory, makes the ball bounce more off of the bat. Now, we know a little more about corked bats now, and this has kind of been proven false and is a little bit pseudoscience-y.
Thanks a lot, physics.
Yeah.
Ruining the fun.
In theory, it sounds pretty fun. But Anyway, so the manager, doing his due diligence, he warns the home plate umpire, Dave Phillips, before the game, who gets ahead of it and confiscates Albert Bell's bat and locks it away in the umpire's dressing room to be inspected later. Now, at the time, only 2 players had ever been caught with corked bats. Greg Nettles of the Yankees,
really?
he's back again.
Yeah.
The rapscallion. He actually made an appearance in Short Hops 32. And then Billy Hatcher of the Astros. Now, both got 10-game suspensions. So, the truth is, though, Albert's bat, it was corked. And Cleveland, the team knew that his bat was corked. And they also knew that they'd lose their hottest hitter for 10 games while they were in the heat of this battle for the division. So clearly something had to be done about this. Enter our hero, Jason Grimsley.
Ooh.
Now, Jason Grimsley is a starting pitcher. He's in his 5th MLB season. And to this point, he'd been mostly below average to average. He had a 85 weighted ERA, 16% strikeout percentage, 9.2% walk percentage, 4.58 ERA.
Those don't sound like great numbers.
He was just, you also got to take into account steroid era. Hard to pitch.
True. That's true.
But he, so he wasn't setting the world on fire, essentially. Now, right here, you'll see that he was 6'3" and 180 pounds. Keep that in mind for the rest of the story. Yeah. So Grimsley was not scheduled to pitch that evening. And so he said he was just sitting in the dugout, and he, his thought comes to his head, and he's like, I can get that bat. So the Cleveland team knew that the dressing room had a false ceiling with removable tiles, possibly creating an opportunity to climb above the clubhouse and into the umpire's chambers.
Now let's take a moment to consider what is about to happen. Jason sitting in the dugout, and he knows that the star of the team's bat is illegal and is in the umpire's private quarters, and he's thinking, I can do this. I bet you I can steal this bat back.
Well, he was a very adventurous. Yeah, I think that's great. It's a very early 20th century baseball story that we kind of love to talk 100%. About here. It just happens to take place in 1994.
And then Ty Cobb told him to do it.
Yeah, right. He whispered in his ear. So anyway, Grimsley devised a plan. Now, this is really cool. So I was actually able to unearth, for the first time ever, Jason Grimsley's original heist scheme. He wrote it down in crayon.
Because we had to make a podcast as well, you have to explain exactly what we're seeing here to people over audio.
So I definitely, personally, I did not make a dumb little crayon map with his little scheme. But as you can see here, he's climbing through the ceiling right here, lowering down like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, pulling a switcheroo with the bats, that hopefully they end up winning the game. Anyway, in the 6th inning of this contest, Grimsley puts his plan into action.
I love that.
This is you can't.
You did such a good job in that.
You can't give me visual elements because I'm going to take it way too far. But so like I said, in the 6th inning, he goes for it, right? He grabs a flashlight and an uncorked bat belonging to his teammate, Paul Sorrento, and then climbs up into the ceiling inside of the manager's office. Now he's crawling over and around piping and wires, and so he slowly found the way to the umpire's dressing room, doing his best not to slip and fall through the ceiling. Again, he's 6'3" and 180 pounds. This is a grown man climbing through the vents. After around 30 to 40 minutes, he thought he found the dressing room, but when he removes the tile to drop down, he actually realized they miscalculated, and he was instead looking directly down at a groundskeeper just relaxing on the couch. He's got a great quote from this, and he says, I had to put the tile back down, but he said, I put the tile back down, but he had to know. Thank goodness he didn't say anything.
And keep in mind, he's in full uniform as well.
Yes. This is in the middle of the game. This isn't something that they did, before first pitch. This is the 6th inning. And so he's just rooting around up there, and he's 180 pounds. He could not have been quiet. But he moves around a few feet, and then he actually is able to emerge in the umpire's room alone. And he says, my heart was going 1,000 miles an hour, and I went in. I just rolled the dice. It was a crapshoot. So he jumps down onto a refrigerator and makes the swap. Oh, thank you. Drawing should be a prize. And he makes the swap. Now, you might be wondering why he swapped Albert Bell's bat for his teammate Sorrento's instead of for another one of Bell's. Because, as many of you who have seen a major league bat, they obviously have the name etched into it, right, by the lumber company. Well, the reason he didn't swap it out for another one of Bell's bats is because all of Albert Bell's bats were corked, every single one of them. So they pretty much just took the next best option, and so he grabs it, and so he quickly he swaps the bats out, and then he scurries back up into the ceiling. And I guess as soon as he like gets hidden, he hears someone walk into the room, and he just says, he's like, I had to sit there for about 2 minutes. I was 20 or 30 feet from somebody, which is just, I'm just imagining this like, it sounds like it's straight out of a movie, right? Like kind of like slapstick, just hiding like all like tangled up in the ceiling. But he did say, he thought he was very sneaky about it. He was feeling very satisfied, and he actually escaped back to the Cleveland clubhouse to show off the bat to his teammates, and who, for one, they were just completely taken aback that he just had the audacity to try such a thing. And then, of course, they were super hyped up because he just, he was successful.
What do you think would have happened if he was caught? Like, what kind of repercussions are we looking at here, you think?
I'm sure that Bud Selig would have had a very measured and well thought out approach.
That's very reasonable of you. You're correct.
No.
It's just a chunk of wood anyway, so hey.
Anyway, so Cleveland goes on to win the game 3-2. It's a great success, right? Well, yeah, more or less. Now, Albert Bell did end up going 1 for 4 with 2 Ks. He just hit a single, didn't have no RBIs, which that's a solid day. It's maybe not for Bell at the time, who was on fire. So it seems like he got away with it, right? Wrong. So umpires, they pretty much immediately knew the bats had been switched because in addition to having the wrong name now on Albert Bell's bat, they returned back to their dressing room and they found bits of ceiling and, like dust sprinkled around the room because Grimsley, he's, massive and he's just not as sneaky as he initially thought, right? So then the commissioner's office demands that Cleveland produces Albert Bell's heisted lumber, wow. And they actually threatened to order an FBI investigation, and they were threatening prosecution if Cleveland didn't comply. So, with their tail between their legs, they give the bat back, which was in fact determined to have been corked. Bell was originally suspended for 10 games, but it was reduced to 7 on an appeal. And it was actually a mystery for a long time as to who had actually stolen the bat until Grimsley, now on the Yankees a couple of years later, revealed that he was behind the caper himself in an interview with the New York Times. Now, in the interview, he defends himself. He said, "Hey, look, I had the interests of the team at heart, and that was one of the biggest adrenaline rushes I have ever experienced." This was somebody who pitched on a major league mound, and he said that sneaking around in the vents and in between the walls was like, that's hilarious.
What a silly thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of put you in the corner here. I don't know if you know the answer.
Oh, no.
So Bell was suspended for 10 games. Was he suspended that season, or is it later on?
So it was actually
impact the standings.
It was reduced to 7 on appeal. And then, as we both know, nothing else of importance happened in the 1994 season.
That's a good point. Yeah.
No, anyway, so for those of you who don't know, because there might be a couple of you, the season ended up being canceled. And he actually didn't finish out the rest of his suspension in 1994. Really? Yeah, because this was like...
Well, it didn't carry over to 95 season?
I don't recall if it did. Okay. I could go back in and research and give you an answer to that maybe in our next episode.
Sure.
But yeah, so yeah, but luckily, baseball would never lock out again because that's a silly idea. All right, on to our next segment, the Pickle Jar.
I feel like we need like a debriefing for that last segment. That was a lot of fun.
All right.
So yeah, the Pickle Jar. So what we do here, intrepid listeners, is we break down a phrase that baseball uses. We used on deck, in the hole, Baltimore chop, and we talk about what it means and where it comes from. And this one is one of my absolute favorite baseball terms, Muffinism. Now, I'm pretty sure Noah knows what this means because I talk about it quite often. If anyone has any idea, feel free to let us know. But if before I told you what Muffinism meant, Noah, what do you think it could have meant?
So So yeah, Brandon's been wanting to do Muffinism for the Pickle Jar for a while. And yeah, like he said, this is just a segment we use to, find the meaning behind certain weird slang, right? In terms of Muffinism, I gotta say, because you've told me and I honestly don't remember very well.
Oh man, you're breaking my heart.
I'm sorry, Brandon. My guess is I know it's like 1800s, 1900s, like early baseball. And I think it's just like context clues, and maybe this is also me remembering it, but you're just not super, not super athletic, or maybe you don't look very athletic out there.
Muffin, that
I
kind
don't.
of makes sense. Sure.
I like muffins though, so I feel I'm a big muffin guy. So I feel like that's kind of
Do you just do the muffin tops, or do you do the whole muffin?
Well, the tops are the best part, but
Okay,
I
just
work
making
through
sure.
it. Yeah.
This is the content you get at a Pictureless podcast, folks.
Yeah.
Or at least with short hops. I don't want to
Short
degrade
hops and tall
Pictureless
tales,
now. I
yeah.
apologize. All right, so let's see what Muffinism actually is.
All right.
So Muffinism, it means somebody who is playing exceedingly poorly in their play. So that's kind of a muffin. So the origin here is, well, back in the 1800s, you had a variety of teams. So you had the starters, and then you had the backup squad, the second nine, and then you had the muffin squad. So the muffin squads were the backups of the backups. Yes. So in 1869, Henry Chadwick defined muffins as this is the title of a class of ball players who are both practically and theoretically unacquainted with the game. Some muffins, however, know something about how the game should be played, but cannot practically exemplify their theory. So, muffins are folks that might know how to play baseball, but they just can't do it.
That is a really like biting comment though, that
Isn't
you're both practically and theoretically unacquainted with the game.
And yet
it's
you're
not
still
even that you're
playing
bad. Like you don't know what you're doing.
I love that biting, not even backhand. It's just insult.
It's just a straight up insult.
Yeah, and these muffin game teams would actually play games against each other. They would typically play the game after the main teams would, and they were quite popular with the crowds. And they offered, quote, biting parodies of baseball. so
kind of like, but I feel like Muffinism kind of, it's you're not good, right? But it kind of sounds like the muffin teams were a little bit like the Harlem Globetrotters, except without the skill.
Without the skill, yeah, I would say that they just amused the audience, and weren't very good. So then the term Muffinism then came to mean that a first team ball player is playing like they belong on the muffin team. They're just not doing good. Maybe you boo the ball at second base, you make a Muffinism play, and let me tell you, if I had the power, this is the one term I'd want re-ingrained into our baseball culture today. I desperately want somebody to make an error and then say, well, that was just a muffin play right there. I want that.
If any baseball commentators or play-by-play people are watching this game, if you work in Muffinism into a game somehow, I don't know, we'll do something. I don't know.
Game over. I want that so bad.
I agree. I think that would be hilarious because we have so many the whole thing about baseball slang and language is that a lot of the time it's silly and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and that's kind of like the heart of it, right? I don't think this would be out of place today. I mean, maybe a little, but
we have to explain what Muffinism is. So that's my favorite term. What about you? What's your favorite baseball term?
My favorite baseball term, man, caught me on the spot with that one. I liked when we did catbird seat.
Catbird seat was a fun one.
A couple months ago, which is you're at the top of the standings, right? You're looking down on everyone. I always just this is really boring, but I like the term bunt because I feel like that's a good word that explain the sound of it is exactly, it fits. It's very fitting, right? It's almost onomatopoeia.
Yeah. Do you know where that comes from though? Bunt?
I don't. Do you?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay. Maybe we'll save that for.
We got to throw that in now. Yeah, I'm gonna do some
jar.
research into bunting.
All right, sounds good. Well, anyway. Bunt goes with muffin. That's funny. That's a good written pun. Anyway, Brandon, tell us all about the 1942 Negro League World Series. Now, I don't know anything about this, so I'm gonna sit back and
heckle when appropriate. Short.
I am going to heckle you the whole time.
That's fine. You can throw peanuts from me from California. All right. So the 1942 Negro League World Series. This was the Kansas City Monarchs taking on the Homestead Grays in honestly one of the most event-worthy World Series I know of. So some quick little background here. So these are the two most historic teams in Negro Leagues, at least two of the three really most historic teams in the league. The Kansas City Monarchs, they were the powerhouse here, winning the National League 5 of the prior 6 seasons, and would end up with over 1,200 franchise victories, second most in Negro League history. And this iteration of the Monarchs were led by one of the greatest pitchers of all time, who was around maybe possibly 40-ish years old. You know what I'm talking about here?
I might have an idea, and I'd go as far as to say that I consider him the greatest pitcher of all time.
There we go. We just got it in the comments. Satchel Paige. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Now, in the other dugout across the field was the legendary Homestead Grays. Their all-time roster is absolutely stacked. You have Cool Papa Bell, one of my favorite players, Oscar Charleston, Judy Johnson, Buck Leonard, and in 1942, they were led by possibly the greatest catcher of all time, Josh Gibson, the Black Babe Ruth. Or as he said, Babe Ruth was the white Josh Gibson. So the stage is set for these monumental teams to clash with these great players about to oppose each other. So in game one, well, not much happened in game one here. Satchel Paige, of course, led out the series with the Monarchs and performed as you would think. He went 5 innings to scoreless ball, including a 420-foot flyout by Josh Gibson. The guy hit the ball 420 feet and it was a flyout. I love those.
Do you think he was a little irritated by that?
He must have been. Like in almost any field except like the Polo Grounds, that's a home run.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would think like where do you know where they were playing?
Oh, you know what? I know where they played in every other game except for game one.
Okay.
Oh man, I feel bad about that. So Josh Gibson flew out 420 feet, and the Grays would crumble by committing 6 errors in the final 4 innings, which led to a Kansas City victory. So Kansas City up 1-0.
That's not a recipe for success. 6 errors.
No, 6 errors is a bad day. But that takes us to game 2 and that 7th inning. This is a legendary moments. This took place with pretty bad weather, actually. People thought the game was going to be canceled just because it was so bad out there. And so not many fans showed up to witness this. But of course, the show must go on. So Satchel Paige was scheduled to start the game again after starting game 1, because that makes sense. But he relinquished the ball to Hilton Smith, saying that Smith, the pitcher, deserved the honor. And so he went on to pitch 5 scoreless innings. Excellent. And then, of course, Smith was relieved by Satchel Paige. And really quick, before we jump into this big moment, so it was played in Griffith Stadium in D.C., so kind of odd dimensions there. So Satchel Paige is now in the game. He pitches 1 inning, 6, does well. And in the 7th inning, with Satchel's Kansas City up by 2, something magical happened. Well, I mean, something magical definitely did happen, but just how it happened is kind of up for grabs here. So we're going to go with the full-fledged legend of the moment first. So Satchel Paige and the Homestead Grays catcher Josh Gibson, they both went way back with each other. They had played across the country multiple times, or across multiple countries, rather, since 1930, and they knew each other pretty well, having played with and against each other for those years. And of course, anyone who knew anything about Negro League baseball knew about Satchel Paige. And anyone knew Josh Gibson held the records for longest home runs across Major League stadiums. So this was a big moment. However, Satchel also knew that Gibson had been going through a rough patch that year. So early in 1942, Gibson was just under a cloud. He had gained significant weights up to 225 pounds. He was found drinking in the bullpen, had a difficult time crouching behind the plate as a catcher, and was just not having a good time. Now, Gibson did manage to turn it around. He ended up hitting .313 on the season with 181 OPS plus, which is great, but is still far below Josh's standard. And he came back in 1943 to hit at least 400 over the course of the year. So he was just in kind of that weird funk in 1942, which I think we all get right now. So now we're going back to that 7th inning. Yeah. So now we're going back to that 7th inning. Satchel, he is in his second inning of work and quickly gets 2 outs. Up comes a speedster, Jerry Benjamin, who absolutely ropes a triple off Page. So Satchel, he kind of walks around the mound for a little bit, talks a bit with his manager, and decides to intentionally walk the next batter. So that way you have outs, first, second, good to go. But instead of pitching to the next batter, he intentionally walks the following batter as well to load the bases in a World Series game. He intentionally loads the bases in Game 2 of the World Series to face one of the most feared hitters of all time, Josh Gibson.
You just gotta love like the ego that pitchers have. Obviously, Satchel Paige, greatest of all time. But just like that mentality that it takes to be a pitcher, and no, I want the best versus the best. Here's my best pitch, hit it.
Especially when you're a Negro League player in the World Series, like the amount of crap he had to get through just to get to that point is incredible. And Satchel is one of the most legendary showmen of all time in baseball, easily. So he kind of knew the stage he was on and wanted to set that moment. So as the story goes, so again, Satchel knows what the kind of hardships Gibson's going through and decides to start ribbing him. So as Gibson, I know. So as Gibson is stepping up to the box, Satchel yells out, "Remember when we were both playing with the Crawfords and I said I'm the best pitcher in the world and you're the best batter? Then I said one day we're going to meet and see what's what." And Josh is kind of digging in and he goes, "I remember." And then Satchel yells out again, he's going to throw a fastball, leather high.
Wow.
And fastball, leather high, strike 1.
So he's reading out. He's like telegraphing what pitch he's throwing.
He's not just telegraphing. He's not tipping his glove a certain way when this pitch is coming. He's straight up yelling to Gibson, "This is what's coming. Hit it or don't." That's
incredible. Like in this, it's not like you're pitching to like the last guy off the bench. This is Josh Gibson. Like he might not be in his. Wow, that's incredible.
I mean, at this point, Gibson's still, I think, 30 years old, so it's not like he's washed up at this point.
Oh yeah.
And so that was the first pitch. And then Satchel gets the ball back from the catcher, and he yells out that he's going to throw another fastball at the belt. Strike 2.
So now you're just piping it right down the middle at him.
Mm-hmm. Still can't get it. Satchel at this point, 38, 41-ish around. So he's getting up there and still firing it fast. And at this point, remember, the crowd is pretty thin just due to that bad weather. So they're able to hear what Satchel's yelling out to Gibson. And so they know the 2 strikes, and Satchel is telling them exactly what's coming. They get into it. They start hollering. And so Satchel gets the ball, looks down at the plate, and says, "This fastball will be a pea at your knees."
What is that?
And it came strike 3.
Wow. Wait, did Gibson watch that one?
He watched all 3 pitches, according to the legend.
Wow.
I mean, he's really pitching at that point, he's probably saving up for this at-bat, Satchel was, and just let it rip. And just keep in mind, he intentionally loaded the bases to get the Black Babe Ruth, and then he called every single pitch and got the strikeouts. That's incredible.
If I had a time machine and could pick any moment in baseball history, I think this would be probably number 1.
Oh, like, between this and the Babe calling the shot, it's kind of the same thing, really. Calling the shot and calling the pitches. It's in the World Series.
Yeah, but the Babe wasn't hitting off of Satchel Paige.
That's also true.
That's incredible.
But again, that is just the legend. What actually happens? Well, according to the newspapers, Satchel did get that first batter out, and then he gave up a single and got a force out. So there were 2 outs. And then the next 2 batters supposedly singled, which loaded the bases for Josh Gibson, who then Page struck out on 3 pitches. He probably didn't intentionally walk, but he did strike Gibson out on 3 pitches in the World Series. And did he call his shots? It's time machine, man. We don't know.
I'm a believer by heart. I'd like to think that he did, right? Makes it more interesting.
And well, unfortunately, the first written record of that occurring was about 5 years later, I think. And then Satchel Paige, he wrote about it in his autobiography, which then just exploded everywhere. So, who's to say?
Yeah, but So Kansas City ends up winning?
That's correct, 2-0. Oh, sorry. Yeah, they take a 2-0 lead, which takes us to Game 3 at Yankee Stadium with 25,000 folks in attendance. The Grays had veteran pitcher Ray Brown on the mound, and Kansas City started with, Satchel Paige. And now this one doesn't really have a mystique like Game 2. It ended in a 9-3 Kansas City victory to take a commanding lead in the series. But Game 3 was just the first half of a planned doubleheader. You see, they played in the morning, and at night they played yet again, and the Monarchs won 5-0.
You're telling me that they were trying to do a doubleheader in the World Series?
That's correct.
That is almost like the most unbelievable part of this story, right?
We're just starting here because they won the second game, which should have ended in a sweep. However, the game was planned as an exhibition and did not count in the series. So they won 4 games in the World Series, but that didn't count. And they continue on to actually play 6 more exhibition games between games 3 and 4 of the World Series. And they only played each other one more time in that span. In fact, they went on to play so many games that the Homestead Grays got physically beat up. At least one player broke an arm, sprinkled in a few of the injuries. And allegedly, the Grays lost 2 players to the military draft.
Wow.
So they were kind of beat up.
I just can't imagine playing a whole like just putting a pin in like the World Series.
Yeah, and
right?
so you know what? Let's do some exhibitioning instead.
Yeah.
Ooh. And that takes us to Game 4, Take 1, which I guess technically should be Game 4, Take 2,
1.
because the other one, so it's Game 4, revision something. So this game took place a full week after the official Game 3. And the Homestead Grays, they didn't have any of the usual pitchers on the mounds. All these injuries coming up. So they had somebody known as the papers put it the following day, quote, Pitcher Day on the mound. So we had Pitcher Day going up against, Satchel Paige. And whoever Pitcher Day was phenomenal in that game. He struck out 12, walked 1, and at the plate got himself a double. He outdueled Satchel, for crying out loud. So who was Pitcher Day? Well, it turns out that the Grays actually signed multiple players from across the league to fill in for the remainder of the series. Yeah. They were so riddled with injuries and lost players that they just signed others. And it just so happens that maybe they signed some of the best players in the league. And so that Pitcher Day was actually future Hall of Famer Leon Day, who was, quote, as good or better than Bob Gibson.
Wow. So it's not like they got like, when a team expands, you get like whoever's left over who doesn't get protected. They were just picking out the superstars, right, to fill the gaps.
Like they could have gone down to the Muffin team and picked some of those guys up, but they said no. I like the callback. They said no. We're going to get who we got.
It's respectable.
I mean, why not? Now, as you can imagine, though, Kansas, they didn't really like what just happened. They famously said, "We didn't play the Homestead Grays. We lost to the National League All-Stars." So they protested the game and had the results canceled. And so in their defense, the Grays said they did ask Kansas City for permission to use additional players in exchange for certain, quote, demands, but the Grays just denied that claim. And that takes us to Game 4, Part 2. Electric Boogaloo.
Jeez.
I know. I'm so sorry.
I'm here for it.
Excellent. This game was scheduled to take place in Wrigley Field, but weather conditions, I guess it was really bad weather at the time of year, pushed the game out to Philadelphia Shippey Park, which made Game 4 Part 2 take place a full 16 days after Game 4 Part 1, which took place a full 7 days after the official Game 3. So this is basically like a month between the World Series games. Yeah.
That's wild.
And it was clinch day for Kansas City. So they're going to start the best pitcher, Satchel Paige.
Why not?
Yeah, sure. Except come game time, Satchel wasn't on the mound. Satchel wasn't even new in the stadium. Nobody knew where this guy was. So the Monarchs were forced to start Jack Matchett, who on the left there, he had a 1.9 ERA in the regular season. So, okay, if you can't get Satchel, this isn't a bad substitution.
Right.
But he promptly gave up 3 runs. And then he gave up another 2 in the third to pick Kansas City in a 5-2 hole. So where's Satchel? Well, he had been pulled over for speeding on his way to the ballpark because he was late. So he was given a $20 ticket based off that. But when he did finally get to the park, he was immediately put in the game and stopped the bleeding. He went 5 in the third, scoreless innings. And Kansas City would then go on a tear that game, putting up 7 unanswered runs the rest of the way and take the series in a clean sweep, 4-0, or like 6-0, or something like that.
Right. Wow. And so essentially they just kind of rode Satchel all the way, or for most of the.
I mean, if you got Satchel, you're going to use him. I get that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, when Max Scherzer, obviously, Satch didn't really necessarily get the rest that, we do today, but that's right. Incredible.
Yeah. Like I said, 4 games he played in, got 14 Ks and a whip of 0.9. Love that whip.
Nice.
Other notables, Josh Gibson, his 13 at bats. He didn't do too great. Thanks Satchel Paige for that ribbing. He hit below the interstate in batting average. Then we did some.
Honestly, I was just gonna say, like, I would be completely mentally out of order if somebody told me exactly what pitches they were gonna throw and then still beat me. Like, I that's totally understandable.
And some other notables, actually probably the best performers. Bonnie Sorrell had a hit over 500 with 5 RBIs, and he tied Babe Ruth's record of 10 hits in a 4-game World Series. So right off the bat, look at that. And Bill Jesse Williams, 5 stolen bases in the series, which is still a 4-game World Series record.
Wow, that's pretty.
Yeah, I actually have a little bit of a trivia question for you. Do you happen to know who has the most stolen bases in the World Series all time? You know who? You definitely know.
I mean,
I'm just curious.
See, this is where you expose me in front of the world. Okay, so I'm just gonna immediately go with the safe answer. I actually don't even know. Did Ricky? I don't know.
It wasn't Ricky. It was the guy.
I assume it's not.
It was the guy Ricky passed, Lou Brock.
Lou Brock. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's,
so yeah, that is the story of the 1942 Negro League World Series, and I just barely scratched the surface on that thing. Like, if you guys want to go read on it, I strongly suggest it. It's just a great time. I love those leagues so much.
Yeah. And it does look like we have a little bit of time left. So we're going to try and cram this game in here, a little audience participation. But on our podcast, we do like to play a game that, it's an excuse to talk about some guys. But we play it. It's called Rent, Extend, Cut. And the idea is we take 3 players from throughout baseball history from a variety of positions. And we pretty much we're considering their entire career. Which one would you want to rent if you're in the the midst of a postseason chase? Which one would you want to build a statue of, right, and make your team the face of your team? And which one's getting left off the roster? Today we've got some great 90s and 2000s legends. We've got Edgar Martinez, Kenny Lofton's back, and then Chase.
And your favorite,
Utley, the guy, the man actually. So
adding some respect to his name.
Well, that's what they called him. So if you're in the comments, feel free to just kind of assign one to each, and we'll get this going.
So the idea is that you're in the midst of a pennant race, so it's the beginning of the season. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're considering just their whole career here. So all right, so Brandon, what initially jumps to mind? What are you immediately kind of leaning towards?
Like, I understand how much Edgar Martinez means to the Mariners and the fan base, what he's capable of, what he did in playoffs. I was actually just in Seattle a couple weeks ago, and I passed Edgar Martinez Drive. Like, that's kind of cool.
That's
so
really
I
cool,
get him.
Actually.
Kenny Lofton, man. Outfield, center field, played some of the best defense out there, was phenomenal, and played a game I love to watch. And then he got Utz. I think we're all very familiar with Utz.
What you call him?
Utz.
Utz?
Utz, yeah.
I've never heard that before.
You never heard that? Oh, man, we used to say it all the time. It was Utz, and Kinsler was Baby Kins, because they're kind of linked in my mind. Ian Kinsler, yeah. But he's not part of this conversation.
Sure.
So for me, I think I want to, extend Lofton because I love watching that kind of play. Love it to death. I want to see that guy play every day for the years to come. And that takes me down to 2. But before I get there, let me ask you, who are you renting? I think we know who you're going to keep.
Yeah, so I'm definitely erecting a statue of Chase Utley in front of my stadium. I'm sorry to all of the people that dislike Chase Utley out there, but he's incredible. And what's interesting is kind of like they're all fairly similar in value. Now, the thing about Chase that I really love though is that like for 5 straight years, that was more than 7 WAR, 130 WRC plus. And I don't know if you know this, Brandon, but for a full decade between 2004 and 2013, he was second in MLB in WAR behind only Albert Pujols.
He was an absolute phenomenal player. I do remember that. Absolutely.
He's a monster. He had incredible defense. He led the league in ultimate zone rating during
and he kind of came
peak.
up late, didn't he? Like he didn't come up as like a 20-year-old or anything like that.
Yeah, I believe he was like 26-ish. I see in the comments we have a lot of Edgar love, and that's actually probably going to lead me. I think it's harder for me to determine between Edgar and Kenny Lofton because I love Kenny. I've met Kenny. He's just such a fun, exciting player. But also, Edgar Martinez is like a generational talent hitting, right?
Yeah.
He pioneered the DH position, and I think it really comes down to how much do you value defense. For me, I think that Edgar is probably just if I'm, and that's the thing is like when we play these games, it's not necessarily pick who's the best. It's also like, there's
you got to follow your heart.
You got to follow your heart. That's what baseball is about, right? You pick the guys you grew up watching. That's why, I'm a little biased towards Chase. I think if I'm in the middle of a playoff hunt, though, I want Edgar's bat in the lineup.
Yeah.
Because he was just on a whole nother level. I mean, he played almost 20 years and, he hit 312, right? He had 7 straight years above 150 WRC plus. And he walked more than he struck out. He had, almost 15% walk rate versus, around a 14% K rate. And I think that in the grand, like, tapestry of baseball history, just like thank you. Just what he did for the designated hitter position. And that's
blessing
not
and a
something
curse.
to be. Yeah, blessing and a curse. I know we're both National League guys. So I guess it really also just hinges on how you feel about the designated hitter. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find a more impactful bat to have in your lineup as you're fighting for a playoff spot. And of course, Kenny Lofton though. So I found this out about Kenny Lofton
that he
when
was
I was
great.
doing this research. I knew he was great, and all 3 of these guys, I think,
true. Yeah.
They should be in the Hall of Fame, Kenny especially. But I think that, I found this out. So between 1992 and 1996, about, 5 years, he stole 325 bases. Like he cleared 70, or he hit 70 stolen bases twice. I can't imagine anyone today doing that.
Do you remember his, or do you know if you're looking at it, his success rate in stolen bases there?
I don't off of the top of my head, but
I'm just
going
to guess it was about 95% then. I'm just going to guess it was 95% success rate.
There's no way for how often he stole. I mean, it's nice to think about, but I will say though, my guy Chase Utley had the second best stolen base success percentage of all time.
So who are you cutting?
Who am I cutting? I got to think within the scope of the game that we have here, I got to cut Kenny, and I hate it because I feel so wrong. I feel so wrong. And like, I guess it's also the point is there's not
that
really.
That is the point. You always come out of this feeling kind of dirty about it and you don't like it.
I just think that there's, it's for the situation. I think that I just rather have Edgar's bat. Of course, Kenny was a premier defender in the outfield. He was actually second in MLB in outfield assists with 85 during his peak.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's kind of overlooked when we talk about Kenny Lofton is he did not really strike out. And I think that, come playoff time, that's a nice,
Absolutely.
that's a good skill to have. He never struck out 90 times in a season, and he played 17 seasons. Like, that's really incredible.
Yeah, I think for me, already extending Lofton because I love that play. I am going to rent out Martinez. I want that bat in my lineup down the stretch. And sorry, Yats, got to cut you. It hurts. In my mind, I already have a great second baseman. on my team, so maybe that's what it is. That
So
makes
now
it a
you're
bit
just
easier.
you're just extrapolating.
Yeah,
right?
I already have Joe
Like-
Morgan, so I don't need Chase
Oh,
Utley.
okay, sure. I mean, if you've got the whole All-Star team, why not? Yeah, I mean, sorry, Mets fans, I got to go with Chase on this one. But yeah, I just feel so dirty cutting Kenny Lofton. I
good.
can't. It doesn't parse well. But I don't know. And I probably will text you tonight at some point. You know,
And
kind
apologize.
of like, I was wrong. Yeah. I'm not gonna apologize. But,
Own it.
yeah, I'll own it. I'm fine being wrong.
Yeah, and really quick, we had mentioned Kenny Lofton barely striking out. I know it's cheating to bring up Bonds, but I read a tweet today that from 2001 to his retirement, Bonds walked more than he swung and missed.
Yeah, I mean, he was just a video game character.
That's silly. But yeah, so I just wanted to put that in because I thought that kind of blew my mind today.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what we're here for is stats like that. Yeah, and it looks like the comments. It looks like people are.
They're coming out. They're coming out.
Chase Utley's World Series parade speech should put him on the team alone. Thank you. If you, I'm not going to repeat it here. But please go on YouTube and find it.
I know it. Take us home.
All right. Oops. Yeah. So if you liked what you heard today, please check us out. Check out some of our other episodes up on Apple Podcasts or up on Spotify. You can follow my good friend Brandon Riddle on Twitter at BD Riddle. You can find me on Twitter at Noah A. Scott 6. And then, yeah, if you like what you're hearing, feel free to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay in the loop. But Brandon, I had a great time. Did you have a great time?
I always have a great time with you, Noah A. Scott 6.
Okay, now I feel like you're pandering a little bit. Yeah. So where are we at on the on our?
I think podcast was good. So now it's just here for the PitchCon.
Oh man, we are so close right now. It is absolutely incredible. Before I go into all of that, because I want to spend a moment with you guys. That photo, not photo, I'm sorry, that drawing
that you
guys have made is simply magic.
Thank you.
I don't know how else to put this. It is unbelievable. And a question from chat was, can you give this away as a PitchCon prize?
I 100% can. I think I have it right here.
This is oh my god, it needs to be framed.
We'll sign it. Yep.
All right, so we'll give that away to a lucky winner if you selected if you selected a drawing from Ellen Adair. This will be included in that one.
Excellent.
It's just amazing. I mean, I want to really point out the show over here. I think that is my favorite part. I don't know if the report said that the Grimsley had the show playing inside the room, but yeah, just
artistic license.
The old switcheroo, a happy Albert Bell, and of course Cleveland's gonna win. And look, this is just such gold. I gotta say, man.
Now, before we wrap this up, Nick, I'm just curious as to see who you would pick for that last game there.
I mean, without a doubt, you do not touch Chase Utley. Get out of here, Chase. Just not that. I was actually in my head trying to figure this out. I feel like the biggest push for a World Series would be Edgar more than Kenny Lofton. But Kenny Lofton is just such an aura and him. Like, you can really build around that.
That's why you got to keep Lofton, absolutely.
Yeah, so you keep Lofton and you rent Edgar. Even though, like, you always want Edgar around, I will say, I know it sounds really stupid, but that's a DH spot that could be helpful elsewhere. And he takes that, and there's less flexibility in your daily lineup because of it. So Kenny Lofton is the one I want to hold for a long time.
All right.
You know that sound right? Muffinism, my God. How do you say that? Do you say, like, oh, he is going through Muffinism?
Oh, no, so, like, he just, like, committed a Muffinism play. Like, it's this Muffinism play.
Would it work to call someone a muffin? Is that, like, in the...
I'm going to find out and see what kind of blowback I get.
Is that kind of where he, like, muffed it comes from?
I think that's where it came from. I think that's what I was reading. But yeah, 1869 is when that came into play, and I won it back desperately.
Amazing, guys! It's such a good podcast. I'm so happy you got a larger stage for it here. Such a joy, really. Like I'm all about the celebration of baseball in many different forms, and there's no better than what you guys do with Short Hops and Tall Tales. So everybody, subscribe to the feed. Follow Brandon, Riddle, and Noah Scott. Absolutely. And really, guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Good luck, guys.